But have we ever really tried to build a secular morality as a society?
Well, yeah. I mean, you don't think the Soviets, the Bolsheviks were that?
As a single unit, I don't think there is a better single unit moral structure that humanity has today than Christianity. My whole thing is that I think that, or not even I think, but it's not impossible that we could do better. Whether that is, just strictly morally, whether that is culturally, or whether it is specifically getting close to God. Like a lot of people talk about how, God is unknowable and all that stuff. I mean, that's a whole other conversation. But let's say that's the case. So I'll put my hand right out of the frame. God's up here. And let's say, if you're a typical leftist atheist, you're all the way down here, and it goes up and up and up and up. And Christianity brings you all the way up here. All I'm saying is, are we sure there's nothing else? Are we sure there's nothing else? Because if there is, and it applies to people, like the people who are like, well, I don't believe in a sky daddy kind of thing, then how is that not better?
Well, let me. I think that you could point to reality and make your claim quite easily, but all you would have to say is you can't envision a society that would work even better. It's this sort of, let's take religious out of it for a second, right? It's like the problem with, there's so many problems with capitalism, right? But it's the best system we got. It's better than all the other ones. That doesn't mean that it can't get better. We should always strive to make it better. So now let's do it in the context of morality, right? And we can say, even if Christianity is the best we have now, you could look around and see problems in the world, right? We have Christianity now, and there are problems in the world. So theoretically, is there room to improve? I don't think you're wrong to point to reality and suggest that. However, I think from a Christian perspective, you've already answered your question. Like, yes, there's room to improve, and the room to improve is all humans are fallible. We all fall short of the grace of God. And so we could seek to get even better in our relationship with God through a Christian faith, which would mean the very metrics you would point to and say, see, there's room for improvement. Sure, if we get closer to God. Now, you may make the argument, I don't think that's the default truth. That's not my belief set. And so I think there are possible ways outside the framework of Christianity that we could get to metrics. Like, let's say if me and you sat down and said, what would be the ideal society we envision? No murder, no one's hungry, et cetera, et cetera. We come up with a bunch of lists, and you could say, could there theoretically be a system that doesn't use Christianity at all? In fact, maybe it doesn't even use religion, but we've somehow structured morality and enough people bought in that we could lead to a better system than we have today. Possibly, but I think that could also be true through a Christian framework as well. So in debate, we would call this a non-unique argument. You're right, you identify something, we should always strive for improvement, but I don't think that Christianity is at the end point, that this is as high as we can get with Christianity. I think we could get much, much higher.
You're saying within
the framework of Christianity. Now, I'm not saying that outside. Let's say I could be convinced by you or many other people, no matter what, I'll never be Christian. And so based on the framework that you're using, right, is it possible for you to adapt an even better framework? It could be impossible within your own framework to be, what's the word I would use, more adherent to your own framework of what morality is, or perhaps you will eventually adapt a framework that is even better that's still not Christianity. I would agree with that. I think that I'm not a relativist that thinks that all moral frameworks are equal. Even if I'm a Christian, I could say, well, I prefer your version of Aristotelian ethics versus someone's version of secular humanism versus someone else's version of Islam. I could tier those and which ones I think would be a better set of ethics. So perhaps you will find a better set of ethics. I'm merely making the claim that correctly acknowledging that we have a long, long way to go in society until we achieve a much closer to perfect society does not mean that Christianity's reached its limit. In fact, quite the opposite. I think the further we get away from Christianity, the worse it is. And we each as individuals and as a society have a long, long way to go to achieve the goals set forth by Jesus.
But then why do you think if Christianity is such so much of the answer, then why do you think that we're seeing such a turn away from it?
Well, it depends. Like, believe it or not, in the past couple months, Bible sales through the roof, church attendance through the roof, etc. I think the reason
that the ortho bro bump. The ortho bro bump.
Well, I think the Charlie Kirk shit had a lot to do. I went to church for the first time in 22 years because of Charlie Kirk. I mean, so I think you're seeing a lot. Now, we'll see if it's lasting.
Dilly Charlie Kirk.
For me, I hope it's lasting. But yeah, maybe a lot of people peters out and only 5% stick. Nonetheless, I think the reason's evident. Like, it's the same reason that you see Other things that we think are objectively good for society, like men becoming strong, men becoming, or not just men, people becoming well-read, etc. Why have we stopped? Because we're lazy, because society's easy, right? Because there's all these things at our fingertips. We don't have to be out there hunting and gathering every day because we have abundance. And not to get too cliche, but good times create weak men. That's where we're at. We're at the good times. When the shit hits the fan, and it will, and I'm not predicting like next week. I'm just saying that's life, right? Like all empires collapse. It's just true. Time is undefeated, right? When it happens, we'll see. There are no atheists in foxholes, they say. I don't believe that literally, but the thrust of what they're suggesting is the worse shit gets, the more you turn to a higher power for answers. And so I think that a lot of the turn away has been because, quite frankly, secularism and sin has been allowed to creep in because we have such abundance, because of the framework that was set forth in this country and by great men who used a Christian framework to lay the groundwork for where we're at.
So then in your perfect world, then everybody would be a pious Christian, or at least
no.
Okay.
Well, I mean, perfect. That's hard.
No, your perfect world.
Guess because in my
Christian.
perfect world, then getting to heaven would be something that I would want for everyone, and believing that Christ is the Son of God would be a precursor of that. But if we take that out, if we take. In my perfect world, everyone would act within the principles outlined in Christianity, even if they chose to do it through a different framework, which could hypothetically be possible. I would argue that I don't think it's practically possible, though, without a belief in Christianity for society at large to act that way. I think it's possible for individuals, right? But as a society at large, I don't know that it's possible, because I think that a lot of people, and I don't know if it's over 50% or if it's a substantial minority of people, like 20% or something like that, but there's a lot of people that need that inherent reward punishment structure in order to do the right thing. And I just don't know if people are willing to make that choice. I mean, there's problems. Like, you should talk to some, like, here's something I've been struggling with. Like, I had one of the big supporters of my channel, me, got in a big row about this, and I've only seen him back one time since. He's pissed. The idea of forgiveness. Should I forgive the assassin of Charlie Kirk? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what forgiveness means, right? I understand that forgiveness, to me, this is what I think it means. Do I accept that if this person becomes truly repentant, that they should be left into heaven, and that God should forgive them because they've accepted Christ and they have become repentant? Sure, I accept that. I will. Does that mean that I say I'm no longer mad at what you did? Maybe that's what some people say forgiveness, but I don't know how I could do that, right? And Christianity, one of the flaws of it, though I don't think it's really a flaw, but it's something, because we are weak in our Christian faith, that's exploitable, is this idea of the turn the other cheek. So we can aggress upon you, and if you ever get mad about it, now tisk tisk, you're not supposed to get mad, you're supposed to forgive. To which I would say, well,
politically is not a good way to go about it.
Politically, that's a terrible thing. And then, even still, I only forgive a person that's sorry, even outside of a religious sense, right? Like, if you steal from me and I'm like, hey, Andy and Jesus, you just stole out of my safe, you stole my money. You're like, okay, forgive me. I'd be like, well, are you really sorry? No. Then no, I'm not forgiving you, right? Like, I don't just forgive you without you seeking forgiveness, right? So I think that, but nonetheless, you see the point. So in a perfect society, I would say, yeah, a perfect society, everyone would be a pious Christian. It will be impossible to get there. I understand that, but that would be a goal to shoot for. So what does that look like without forcing people into Christianity? The values, the works that you would expect from a person that was acting as a pious Christian become values that we promote in society, even if it's through a secular point of view or a Muslim point of view or a Jewish point of view. I think that it makes sense to structure our government based on those Christian values. However, by no means would I force someone into that. I think if we, for example, say, due to our Christian point of view, murder is illegal, and you're like, absolutely, I'm a Muslim, but I think murder should be illegal. No problem. Like, great, you got there in a different path, but we agree. No murder, no theft, right? So for
that's
me,
where
I'm
I'm
fine
at.
with
It's
that.
trying to get people to say to put that aside and see that there are, secular people, there are atheists, agnostics, whatever, that politically align with you. That it's not a monolith, and for all intents, it's not even an ideology. It's just a philosophical position. Real quick though, I want to give a shout out to Guam Tech, who was on your channel and gave me a big shout out. So thank you, sir. He said, "You forgive the people that repent. Wholesale forgiveness creates monsters."
Correct.
Yep.
And it's like, you can see that it's inherent in humans. If there aren't consequences. Now, from a secular point of view, again, let's assume for a second God's not real, right? Could you still create a society through a punishment reward structure that would keep people in check? Hypothetically, yes, right? So, for example, you see it's a narrative. I have a 4-year-old, right? Like, if I just leave my 4-year-old pick what to eat every day, he's going to eat chocolate-covered pretzels every day for every meal. And that's obviously, as an adult, you can see the poor outcome that will lead to. If there's no consequences, if he takes another little kid's toy and there's no consequence, he's going to keep taking that toy, right? So, obviously, we grow up. Go ahead.
So, but in that situation, you are then becoming the objective standard. And if we are, we're just talking about, we want our kids to be productive members of society, then you are the objective standard in your household of what is right and what is wrong. And so I get what you're seeing when you zoom out and you're talking about an entire society. My trouble is just that when have we ever really tried to do that? Oh. Now, like, people will talk about, well, we never had real socialism. But have we ever really tried to build a secular morality as a society?
Well, yeah. I mean, you don't think the Bolsheviks were that? I mean, their claim, right? They couched their claim in morality, right? And their claim was for example, look at the Holodomor, right? Where they look at the kulaks and they say, why do you deserve the land? That's bullshit.
Okay. So let me change that question then. So that's absolutely right. But I mean, we all agree, atheist or otherwise, that the gulags are bad.
Right.
So I guess that is the answer to my question. But that's so far into the other things besides the fact that it was atheistic, that don't align with our American values, that I don't see why we would expect that America, the Christian nation, would turn into Soviet Russia just because the Republican president is like, I don't care who you believe in, as long as you care about America, as long as you care about meritocracy and family and grace and culture and all that stuff, then you're with us. I think that is what will create the numbers, the force necessary for the people who are not, quote unquote, on our team morally. They will be in the minority. They will be the ones getting the consequences because we will be the ones that have the power.
Okay, so there's a lot to say here. First, let me say this. The idea of structured, that I'm the authority in my house. Well, right. Again, bad Christian, ill-read Christian, but isn't the idea sort of, right, that like I as the father and the husband is the leader in my house, and then my priest, my pastor, my holy man is the leader in my church, and then he gets his guidance from God, right? And so there's a structure, right, where it's like there is the top person, there is God the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, where all of the instruction comes from. That's interpreted through people that are virtuous and are true Christian believers that are holy men, that then push that down through the teachers, that push that down through to the fathers, the husbands, that push it down through to the father. Mm-hmm. But that's all, that structure falls apart if I myself have to make up the morality myself, because then
that's not what I'm proposing, though.
I know, but I just,
yeah, okay.
So that's one. Second, I think that the way I think you're getting to a point that's truth. I don't know that you're using the best example, saying that you can't envision like the United States becoming the Bolsheviks. Oh, I could easily envision that. In fact, I think we're maybe closer there than you would realize. However, let me steel man the argument for you. Absolutely, just because a secular society has failed when attempted before does not mean that other people attempting this society in different ways couldn't achieve success. Furthermore, we could point to societies that have oriented themselves and claimed to be Christian societies, and they too have failed, right? In fact, you could say in the United States, in some degrees, we set ourselves up as a Christian society, and some smartass like me could say, but the problem is that we've gone away from that Christianity. Sure, then what were the guide rails that Christianity put on in the creation of a society that made sure that it didn't turn from it, thereby leading to the ills that we see? So I get it. I think that you're making a point that's accurate. The problem I would have with it is, though, that I haven't been able to envision what that would look like. Because like even from your stance, like even if it would interrogate just what little I know of your moral framework that you've given, it sounds very utilitarian, which is fine. I'm not saying there's anything inherently wrong with that.
Well, let me just yes, I consider myself a utilitarian, but I put individual liberty above the utility. So
Okay,
that's a simple way to.
Okay, so then, but then we're gonna see clashes in those two. I say this all the time because part of me, I've always considered myself libertarian adjacent. I too value individual freedom and liberty. But you can see how that would quickly run afoul from wanting a country oriented based on a Christian nationalist society. There's going to be unique individual questions that we have, and we say, for example, drug use. Now, I value individual freedom. So if you want to make the poor decision to shoot up heroin, maybe you should be allowed. But a Christian nationalist might look at second order consequences and say, yes, but we could easily see that if we allow that to occur, that's going to lead to degradations of these individuals and parts of society, which will have foreseeable consequences that will affect the rest of us in society. And we'll have to pay for the ills of that, whether through the healthcare that'll happen, the theft, the crime, homeless. Look what happened in San Francisco. Now we just got zombies walking around the street. So how do you
evaluate when Xi Jinping's around?
Right. How do you evaluate that? So if you evaluate a utilitarian framework but prioritizing individual freedom, what do you say about like serious drug use?
So I think that with that specifically, it's almost similar to like a free market idea, that if we are pushing a culture where, hey, you don't want to be doing this, you want to, be living a good life, making money, building a family, being a part of your community, all of these types of things are inherent values of being American as opposed to Christian, or not even opposed to, in addition to. Because I'm not trying to take Christianity away from anybody. I'm just trying to be part of the club. And then it just like there's always going to be dregs of society, whatever that society looks like. But I think the hopelessness and the political, not philosophical, the political nihilism that we see is because, as Vivek Ramaswamy said, there's a God-sized hole in your heart, then something is going to fill it. And I completely agree that it's good. You're going to trade one dogma for another. Now, I have an issue with dogma on the whole, but
right. I get that. But again, the if I'm hearing you correctly, like, so I didn't hear quite would you allow the legalization of those or not? It sounded like you would allow.
Yeah. So that would be legal. And then, because of the fact that people are not good with that, because we are the Christian nation, and now we're bringing in more secular people who also have those values, then we'll be able to create the laws that we want to help prevent that. And we're not throwing them in jail, but you can't get I don't know the specifics. But that's the conversation I want to.
Right. So I get it, but the general principles, what's interesting here, because it doesn't matter if we would say, well, because we're bringing in more people like we want, we would vote in ways. If you're saying that your preference would be to vote in ways to create the law that would not make that a criminal offense, because then there's going to be negatives that come with that from a utilitarian framework. You're going to have streets like San Francisco. Right? That's what's going to happen. And it's like, okay, so at what point does the utilitarianism win out? At what point do you say, look, we've let this go on long enough? You have shown us through your personal choices that you have diminished the rest of society. Not in a direct way, because I think you would agree with that. Like the old coercion argument, the right to swing your fist stops where my nose begins. You're not suggesting that. Like, no, I have the right to swing my fist. It's like,
No,
sure, you do, but you don't have the right to hit someone else, right? But what if you swinging your fist will predictably lead to the consequence that we can see a week from now, that's going to cause an innocent person to be hurt? Do we have the right to stop you at that moment? That's sort of what the question of drug legalization. Now, I bring it up, the specific on this topic doesn't really matter. The point is, though, that it's clear that if look at it this way, like, it'd be nice if we had someone that we both agreed was way more morally righteous than us and way more smart than us, that we could say, let's appeal to you. What do you think? That's God. Right. That's the idea of God, where it's like, these are difficult questions. We don't know how to orient ourselves when it comes to these specifics. And you're like, yeah, but sure, this is one specific. Yeah, except there's going to be millions upon millions upon millions of them. And what happens is, in those gaps eventually widen, right? Where it's like, well, the people get in there and there's not consequences. So they're like, well, we're just going to keep widening and widening and widening. And now something that could start off as a virtuous thing. Well, we want to prioritize your freedom. For example, we prioritize a woman's freedom to choose their body. I'm one of the people that say, I actually understand the argument. I too find bodily autonomy very important, right? But I also find someone's right to live to be very important.
It's a baby.
So if I think that it's a baby, although I absolutely agree that a person has the right to say, no, wait a minute, I don't want the government telling me what I can and can't do with my body. Totally agree. But you shouldn't be allowed to kill a living being. So then the discussion becomes, when do we consider this a living human, right? And it's a debate we need not get into. The point is, though, like, they're coming to it hypothetically from a moral virtue. The moral virtue is we want people to have the right to control their own bodies. It's a difficult question. And people have this sense of morality if it's sort of ambiguous. Yours might be the specific one you have. Another person might say, I'm a pure deontologist. I think that the utilitarian calculus doesn't matter. You know, I'm Rorschach. If you've ever read The Watchmen, it's like, no, there is no individual immoral thing that you yourself are allowed to do, no matter what the utilitarian greatness would be. You literally, if I could tell you, hey, if you steal that lollipop from the store right now, you'll prevent World War III. A true deontologist would say no. Stealing is theft, or stealing is wrong, no matter what. Right. No matter that you could see that the predictable second order consequence would be a greater good. You don't get to do that. And so we orient ourselves amongst having to have some sort of objective framework that we could point to have the best cohesive society. I argue that Christianity is probably the best for that because I think Christianity is the truth. But even if it wasn't, at least it's a stable, coherent framework that we could point to. And we could say, this is the objective, and so we're all pushing in the same direction, as opposed to we could be what we would both consider intelligent, moral people, but their systems, the gaps they have in what they think is moral, is dragging us in different directions. That causes a less cohesive society, and I think that's where we see a lot of the tension.